Hello everyone and welcome back for yet another episode of the Off-Grid podcast. I've just been out trekking in Gran Canaria and my God, it was wonderful. 27-degree heat, hiking, feeling fit, pack on my back. God, I felt alive. It was so good. And just what I needed. I just felt like I needed this big release to go and climb some mountains and see some faraway views and just wild camp and be free in the world. God, it felt great. Now, guys, this week's guest is Joe Bradshaw. In a former life, Joe used to be a self-described risk-averse business advisor, but now she is an expedition leader and leadership speaker who has summited Everest and summited all the highest peaks on the 7 continents of the world. In this conversation, we talk about how to change the trajectory of your life, the unspoken history of the first woman to summit Everest, surviving the 2015 Nepal earthquake in Everest Camp 1, what we can learn from Nepalese culture in the West, and what was discussed in Joe's talk to the Red Roses before they went on to win the Women's Rugby World Cup. Joe's life is one big adventure, and she wasn't afraid to describe the turbulence on the roller coaster of life that we're all on. Hope you enjoy it. On with the podcast. Joe, welcome to the Off-Grid podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Jake. It's lovely to be here.
It's it's super exciting. This is one conversation in particular that I've been really looking forward to because you've just had this like very eclectic life over the years. But one thing after reading about all your adventurous achievements and like summiting all the highest peaks in 7 continents, Everest summiter, all this amazing stuff, I was surprised to hear, I must admit, that you were a self-described risk-averse business advisor once upon a time. So I thought that we would start there and maybe just start with who was that person at that time and how did you kind of see the world differently to you do now?
Yeah, gosh, it seems such a long time ago now because I've now spent more time not being that person than being that person. And I've never actually thought about that. So thanks for bringing that up. It's like, oh my God, I've sort of moved away from that mindset. And that mindset really came about when I was never a very bold child. I went off and did stuff. So where we lived in the Cambridgeshire countryside, I'd take myself off to the local riding stables and go and help out there. So I'd go and do stuff on my own. My brother was, we were sort of independent children. I think you were allowed to be that in the 70s and 80s. It was all right to just get on your bike and go. I was thinking on my dog walk this morning, is like we used to go off with honey sandwiches wrapped in foil and be away all day. And our sort of home time was when it was getting dark. And that was it. Mum had no idea where we were. And I drove down those country lanes a couple of years ago. I thought, God, I never let my kids out with no helmets, nothing. So I was a fairly active child, and my thought for my life was I was always going to work with horses, and that was my absolute love. And when I left school, I did do that, and I worked started off in the New Forest, and then went to New Zealand for 7 months, and that was an education in itself. And I was sort of 19, turning 20 then, but I was still very a kind of a risk-averse, shy. I was very shy. And my brother commented that I would go to New Zealand to work, but I wouldn't go and see him at university because I was kind of scared of, interactions. Horses were my happy place. So I was kind of polar opposites, but they worked together. So I'd go to New Zealand, but also I wasn't that keen on meeting new people. So I used horses as my crux. And that was because that was a commonality, and that was really, really important for me. And then got into my mid-20s, and the dream and the reality of working with horses were was growing further and further apart. And I'd had some very bad experiences with employers. And I was seeing a farrier at the time, because that was my other bit of the dream, was to marry a farmer or farrier and go and live, this wonderful outdoor life that I had in my head. And that wasn't working particularly well either. He cheated on me, which sort of cemented the fact that, okay, I was in my I think I was 23, 24, going through the stage in life where you're sort of leaving the comfort of what is your younger years, if you call it comfort, and getting into the reality of, I have a long time to live and a long time to work. Is this really what I want to be doing? I was a bit lost in life at that point. And I'd just, before myself and my boyfriend split up, I'd left horses and I got a job in a department store in Aylesbury, because that's where I was living at the time. And this whole different life was coming about. And I was really amazed that they took me on, because I had zero skills in that environment. I think it was a new department store. They were just looking for people. And fortunately, I was one of those people. And it took me on this route to become this business advisor. So I'd worked in retail. I went into work in newspapers. I had a very short stint back with horses. I got a job in America, and that didn't work out due to personality clashes, I think. And also I was missold the job. And I very much am not blaming other people here. This is very much not an internal locus of control. This is very much the reality of what it was. And I think if I'd really wanted to make that work, I could have done, but it just didn't seem right. So came back, and I got this job at what was Business Link, so business support organisation funded by government. And I kind of lost my confidence in the world. I was in my early 30s thinking, now what? I don't know where to go, what to do. So, and my parents had always instilled in me a really good work ethic. And so whatever job I was doing, whatever industry I was in, I worked my hardest at it, whether I wanted to do it or not. I mean, I've had some jobs that I really didn't want to get up on a Monday morning to go and do. I'm like, no one else is paying the bills for me. I don't want to rely on anyone else anyway. I need to go and do this. And all those experiences and all those different industries have led me to a richness in my work life that I now draw upon now. And I never thought of it like that. I just knew I needed to work hard.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's quite a sort of convoluted. I put a post up on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago about starting an OU degree, Open University degree in psychology. And I'm just about to turn 55. And I'm not the only one in the world that's a mature student. And a guy that I worked with, 25 years ago, said, you've had an unusual career. I was like, well, it may be unusual to you because you've stayed in the same industry. To me, it's led me on paths I never expected to go down. And I'm happy about that. It's worked for me. And so someone else is unusual, probably similar as people may say that for you. I know you're sort of a lot younger than me, but you seem to be on that similar, let's explore what life has to offer, rather than being sort of staying in one particular lane. So it's a very long-winded ramble there.
It's an all-encompassing description of what sounds like a roller coaster of a life and a true adventure. And the reason I started on this area is because whenever I spoke to anyone, like friends, family, about this conversation coming up and talking about your experiences in your life, this was the number one question everyone had from the get-go. Okay. Because I think there are a lot of people who are in a position in their lives where they're doing whatever they're doing,
Yeah.
and they might not know where it is that they want to go, and they certainly don't know maybe how to get there,
Yeah.
but something's amiss. There's
Yeah.
something that's not quite aligned with who they are. And
Mm.
so I feel like that's probably why they were triggered to answer the question straight away.
Mm.
And a lot of them sort of wanted details. So they were asking me, how old were you at the time? How
Mm.
long did it take for you to form your new career
Yeah.
in that path? But I think, would you be able to sort of describe, because it's a big gap from business advisor to
Yeah.
expedition leader and Everest
Yeah.
summiter.
Yeah.
What happened in that time?
Yeah, sure. So when I was working, well, just before I actually went to Business Link, I was working at an electronics company, still in Aylesbury, and the electronics industry was going through a big downturn. So there were lots of redundancies. I was in a fortunate position where I wasn't made redundant, but I was moved sort of sideways into a job that I had started at, which was basically number crunching, and that was not my thing. So I was looking for another job anyway. I know I kind of had job security, whatever that meant at the time. I was looking for something different, and I went to Business Link, and it was at the same time that I had chosen to do a parachute jump for charity, which was very unlike me. I was playing post offices on a late Friday afternoon when I was in this the electronics industry, sat in my office in Aylesbury thinking, okay, what am I up to at the weekend? And this parachute jump came up on what was it was on Yahoo at the time. And I was like, that's going to conquer my fears of heights, because I was sort of racking up all these little fears because I was afraid of what success looked like, but also I was afraid of what failure looked like as well. So I was in a really difficult position in the middle, and I knew I needed to kickstart. And I was in my early 30s at the time. And I told a very good friend of mine, Caroline, who worked at the other end of the office, and I said, oh, I'm going to go and do this parachute jump. And she's like, really? Yes, brilliant. I'm going to take you there. I was like, oh, God, because I was very much the person that would go, yeah, I'm going to go and do this thing. And then have in my head a very good reason to back out. So she took me to the jump site, and it was for a charity, Asthma UK. And her reasoning at the time was just in case you can't drive home, which is always a bit, oh gosh, for someone who's scared of heights anyway, that's sort of a little bit of a and actually I'm so grateful that she did, because I wouldn't have gone. I knew I wouldn't have gone. I would have. It was a beautiful day. There was no excuse for not going because of the weather. I was praying for a bad weather day. It was in August, and excuse me, great weather day. Went and did it. Scared the life out of me. I think when we left the plane, I mean, my instructor was the same height as me. He was built like a brick outhouse, strong as an ox, knew exactly what he was doing. And I felt really safe in his hands. I absolutely, because I was almost in that stretch of, I can't do this fear. I was in the stretch zone, nearly going into panic zone. He was like, we've got this. We can do it. Just, you don't have to do anything. Just do everything I ask you to, and then we'll both be safe. That's really important. And anyway, we got out of the plane, or sort of he took us out of the plane, and I swear I gobbed all over him. I was just screaming so much, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? And it was that real sort of feeling of there is no going back now. Anyway, we landed, got home, and when you do charity events, particularly the parachute jumps or the sort of one-day walks, the charity then sends you the next thing. And I hadn't even thought about what the next thing was. Caroline had. She's like, oh, what's next? I'm like, nope, that's it. Thanks very much. I'll go back in my little hole. And this flyer came through for a bike ride in Peru, which was being managed by a company called Discover Adventure, who are based down in Salisbury, and took it into work. And Caroline was like, right, that's it. That's now. And that bike ride then led on to a couple of other bike rides. And I did the whole, oh, I can't do it because, and my main reason of not doing it because I didn't have the deposit. So Caroline said, that's fine. I will pay for that, and then you pay me back in installments. I was like, oh no, that's it. And you absolutely need champions like that in your life. People who will gently kick your butt to say, let's go and do this. Let's got your back. Just like my instructor, I could have easily walked out of the hangar, but he said, no, we're going to do this. You've signed up for this. Let's go and do it. And so that bike ride led on to a couple of others. And eventually Discover Adventure said to me, would you like to come and crew some trips? So go from being a client to being crew. And that then led on to them offering me a job in the office down in Salisbury, which is now where I live. And that was in 2008. So I gave up this corporate life, and I had, a great pay packet. I had good benefits. Economic development wasn't really my thing, yet I was doing well at it. So, and Business Link were going through lots of changes. So I knew my job again was going to change a lot. And I'm like, now, I've been offered this opportunity, and if I don't say yes to it now, it's probably never going to come again. So it wasn't even a thought process of saying no to this. I was like, let's do it. I was heading towards my late 30s, still single, no ties. So I could just go. There was me and my dogs, So off we moved from Aylesbury down to Salisbury. And it's happened organically. So I never, excuse me, I never had the next step planned. I think when I was asked once when I was doing a Q&A to a corporate, and they were like, so what's your 5-year plan? I was like, I don't have one. They're like, oh, really? It's like, no. I know what I would like to achieve in the next couple of years. And I know, financial stability is always on my mind. And to me, a successful life is being my version of happy. And that's different for everybody. And my version of success isn't to have the big house and have the fancy car. It's to live a rich and purposeful life where I have so many memories and so many experiences that for me, and it's different for everybody, for me, that trumps having the nice cars that I used to have, and all of that stuff when I wasn't happy. So why go back to that? So that's how I sort of moved into the adventure world with no thought ever of climbing Everest, because I still had a fear of heights. And then I was like, if they're giving me the opportunity to become an expedition leader, I need to do something about this fear. And yeah, I did. I realized that I can't be the most fearful person on the expedition because nobody's going to want to be with me. So how can I turn that round? And it's through I'm all about 1% wins. And it's through the micro changes that I made in my life that then become bigger changes, and how I can change my mindset. And that's sort of got me to where I am today. So it's been, it's been a long process, and it's been really hard, and I've loved it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
This is something you spoke about earlier, was this fear of failure. and also the fear of success.
Mm.
And it's clear at that point in your life, there was just a lot of fear and anxiety about
Mm.
what might happen in regards to the future.
Yeah.
This was something that was in everyone I spoke to in doing the research for this. There was fear in the questions they asked.
Yeah.
And I felt like when I was asking them, for most men, I have to admit, the fear was mostly money. They were
Yes.
concerned about, how do I kind of make the transition but still pay my bills and make a career out of this thing.
Yeah.
And then for women, it was more in regards to time and
Mm.
having a body clock. And
Yeah.
I need to have myself sorted by like this period of this age, because what if I want to have a family and stuff like that? You've spoken about beliefs that were limiting you at
Mm.
the time. What would you say to these people? Because if they'll, I know that they'll be listening at the moment, and they'll probably be sat there like, maybe they're feeling motivated, and they're like, yeah,
Mm.
okay, great, Joe's done this. I'm keen to like go and explore. What would the practical advice be for these people that you would give them, just to sort of sit down and try and work out how it is they're going to do this thing, and maybe perhaps what limiting beliefs they might have that they need to acknowledge, perhaps?
Mm. Yeah. So from the money side of things, is first of all, I was looking at what I'd already lost one passion, which was working with horses. And you don't get paid much doing that. It's an absolute passion. And then I moved into business where I was paid well. And with that, it didn't bring me much happiness. So it was nice to have the money for financial security, and it enabled me to do up houses and to do things. It's money is an enabler, but I was miserable. So what's the point? And there is a balance between having enough to live on and not. And I worked out, because I halved my salary when I moved down to Salisbury. I sold my house, got rid of my fancy car and bought a banger. I rented a house down here. So I made pretty much, apart from getting divorced, and I was single at the time, made all the big life changes. My dog died of cancer, all of this stuff. Massive life changes in 2008 when I moved down here. And I made it work for me because what I was doing at the time wasn't working. So I knew I was employable. So if it didn't work out, I knew I could go and get a job that paid more. And what was the risk reward benefit of that? I knew that I had enough to live on, and that was fine for then. And I knew it wasn't going to be forever. So financially, if I really wanted to make it work, which I did, I would make it work. I would, not buy new stuff. And I'm very much in that now, and it's not from a financial point of view these days, but I want to take less from the world by using what we already have. So buy secondhand, pre-loved. I love it, pre-loved stuff. So I made it work. And I think that's the thing, is we get used to what we earn and we fill that space, a bit like a goldfish in a goldfish bowl. The old analogy, if you put a goldfish in a bigger bowl, it's going to grow to that size. And that's what we tend to do with money. So I was thinking, if I earn less and I am happier because I'm in a job that I love, but like when I was working with horses, then that's got to trump earning decent money and being in a job that I don't like, because we spend a lot of time in jobs. So I now have a portfolio career, which is all around growth. So the leadership development, my expedition leading, outdoor instructing, and keynote speaking. And I make it work for me. And now there are tough times, of course. It's very easy for stuff to get cancelled. It's through no fault of my own that you make it work. Because the thought of going back to a full-time position in a company just fills me with dread. I'm so now used to this hybrid lifestyle that, I wouldn't do that. So from the financial point of view, it's, if you really want to do it, find a way. If there's so much other stuff, and I know it's easy for me because I'm, I don't have children, then but I know other friends of mine who have kids who have made it work, and they adapt. You adapt if you really want to make it work. And from the sort of body clock thing, from a female point of view, is I knew from quite an early age I didn't want to have children. And 20 years ago, that was not seen as a good thing for a woman not to want kids. So what's wrong with you? It's like, well, it's just not for me. I have amazing male friends, and I've had horrendous boyfriends. I'm clearly not that great at choosing partners. So I'm like, well, I'm happier with, being singles, and I choose to be single, so I'm fine with that. Excuse me. My body clock thing has been the menopause, which has floored me. And when you work in the outdoors, that's a significant issue. And so, yeah, that's a whole different conversation, but it's sort of, how can I make what I do work without having to go back to that sort of corporate lifestyle that I saw, the singular corporate lifestyle that I didn't enjoy. So I adapted again. I pivoted. I used my skills in other areas to do other things. So yeah, it's quite a long wind again. I seem to go off on one.
Oh, that's the beauty of it. That's great.
Yeah.
And one thing that you're really keen to do as well in your career is to celebrate the achievements of others, particularly women in the adventure space, because I feel like that is certainly something that doesn't usually get a spotlight. One thing that absolutely fascinates me about some of the treks that you've done around the world is your importance that you place on heritage. And one of those people in history is, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Junko Tabei, who's the first woman to summit Everest in 1975. Why is her achievement something that's clearly important to you?
Because these women have opened the doors for us now. And Junko didn't set out, and her team of 15 women, they didn't set out to be the first women to summit Everest. It wasn't woohoo, this is what we're up to. They set out to summit Everest. The fact that they were women was a byproduct of what the expedition was aiming to achieve. The fact that Junko stood on the summit and was the first woman, little did she know what was going on the Tibetan side with Panduo, who had been told that she wasn't allowed to go higher than 6,400 meters because it's a man's world on previous expeditions. And she was on an expedition climbing on the north side of Everest, and 10 days after Junko summited, Panduo summited. So the first and second were so close. And again, Panduo didn't do it to be the first woman. She did it because she knew she was capable and she wanted to summit Everest, And there are so many women hidden in history and so many inventions and so many achievements we just don't know about because they've been sort of parked in the shadows of history. And these women absolutely need to be applauded and celebrated so that women like myself and younger and older know what the history of what we're doing is all about and the challenges that they went through to get to where they are, to get to where they were, and more often than not told they weren't capable of doing it, as was I, told that they should be with Junko and her team. Stop raising money, start raising your families. Back in your box, love, basically. And it's like, no, these women need to be out there. And last year was a big year for us. So 2025 was a big year for us for celebrating Junko and women hidden into history. And so often we asked people who was the first woman to summit Everest, and so few people know. And that's such a shame. I even asked sort of eminent Everest guides, and they're like, no, I don't know. It's like, what?
Wow.
Well, people who say they're experts on Everest, experts on the history of Everest, don't know. And it's like, it's like, now you do. Now, please do a bit of research about her, because there's an amazing book called Honoring High Places, which was written in conjunction with Junko and Helen Rolfe and a friend of Junko's, Yumiko Hiraki. And it's a great leadership book, full stop. And also an amazing walk through history, Japanese culture, what was accepted then, the absolute tenacity of Junko and her friends. When people kept saying, no, you can't do this. They were like, yeah, yes, we can. And we're going to. So you can either come with us or you can see it happening. And they were amazing mountaineers. They weren't what we can sometimes see on Everest these days of lack of experience, but having the money. It was totally the opposite. They had absolutely 100% the experience, and it was finding the money to pay for it that was the issue. So yeah, it was an absolutely joyful year last year of celebrating Junko and the Japanese women's Everest expedition team. And out of that, we have a film. So the legacy continues, and I love that. Never expected that to be on my live CV either. Yeah.
What's the name of the film, and when can we watch it?
So the film is called More Than a Mountain, and it's a celebration of Junko's life, as well as celebrating a team of 15 women that I was part of. I led to a mountain which Junko had climbed 2 years after her Everest success, a mountain called Yala Peak in the Langtang Valley of Nepal. And I knew when I wanted to celebrate Junko's achievements to lead an expedition somewhere in Nepal on a mountain that she had climbed and not go to Everest Base Camp. And lo and behold, this mountain popped up in her history. I was like, yeah, that's it. And also it's in the Langtang Valley. And last year was the 10th anniversary of the earthquake, which shook Nepal and caused so much devastation, including obliterating Langtang village, and 350 odd people, amazing souls, lost their lives in a massive avalanche which wiped the village out. So it was a celebration and commemoration all in one hit, and it was an incredible expedition. And again, the legacy of that expedition has gone on with the team that I was with, all female team, including Tori James, who's the first Welsh woman to summit Everest and the only Welsh woman to summit Everest. And we're on a bit of a film tour this year. So it was premiered on the opening night of Kendall Mountain Festival last November. And we have a series of locations it's being shown at the moment, and there will be more. So if people go to @More Than a Mountain on Instagram, all the information is in there. So we're in lots of different locations and suggestions for other places to go as well, and film festivals. We've entered into film festivals. So yeah, it's
Nepal,
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, please keep going.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a joyous film of celebration and commemoration, because I cry a bit in there as well. Because I was on Everest during the earthquake, so there's a real connection of loss and celebration of life. Yeah, so it's not the sort of film which is all about sort of, you know, strength seen from a physical point of view. It's strength seen from an emotional and psychological point of view. Yeah.
Nepal's clearly close to your heart,
Mm.
and mine too. I was lucky enough to travel there for 3 months and go all over the country, and
Brilliant.
not just for the trekking, but also for the people and the
Mm.
culture. And I know that you experienced the 2015 earthquake that happened in Nepal, and you've commented on the resilience of the people that you saw there. What is it that you experienced at that time, and what did you learn from the Nepalese people?
Oh gosh, just how utterly humble and amazing they are. And what I found was when we were walking away from base camp after the earthquake, so we were at Camp 1, spent 2 days we were at Camp 1 when the earthquake struck. We were there for 2 days, couldn't get down. Then we were rescued by helicopter, myself and 100 and so others. Back to base camp, spent 2 days there trying to clean up. And then, you know, our local team, and we'd lost 3 of our local team in the earthquake. And our local team said, look, go. You're not actually being helpful now, which was fair enough because we weren't. So Rolf and I started walking back to Lukla. And so that was 4 days after the earthquake. And in that time, new supplies were being flown in. So ladders for repairing infrastructure. Everest was off. So ladders, wood, food, all of this. They just get on with it. And I think that's what I've found the difference quite often between cultures where they're used to not having handouts, or not really handouts actually, the ability of just getting on with it. Nobody's going to come and save them straight away. I think we maybe live in a bit of a culture of, well, that's not good enough, why is someone else not fixing this, rather than, okay, how are we going to do it? And I think that's whether people agree with me or not, this is my opinion or my view of seeing it happen in very many developing countries where there's no social system of support. So you just need to get on with it. And also living in a culture where families stay and live together, that's a very different, you can tell the love that goes on. And I was leading an expedition on Amadablam a couple of years ago, and when we flew back from Lukla and got our bus back to Kathmandu, which is like an 8-hour bumpy bus ride, Pemba, who was our guide, his sort of 70-year-old mother just hopped on her bus, just came back to Kathmandu. She was amazing. Just sat there. I mean, this bus ride was like the bus ride from hell. And she was just like, yeah, this is just normal. And she'd walked 3 days to get to Lukla Airport, It's a real humbling and resetting culture to be in, and a reminder that we don't need stuff. We need good people around us to live our lives rather than filling it with stuff, because the real connection is people and family. Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
My favorite country.
same. Really special place, and I
Really.
couldn't help but kind of realize when I was there, actually, some sort of a bit of a mirror to my own face. Started
Mm,
questioning my own values a bit,
mm,
my own beliefs, and how I think I'm probably more Western. That I'm much more individualistic, and what can I get from life? And then you go there, and they're all together. They're all community, and the men hold hands, but they're
yeah,
soft on the outside, but they're hard on the inside. And
yeah,
I just yeah, I learned a lot from that culture, and I have no doubt that during that horrendous time, you
mm,
probably experienced them at probably maybe their sort of purest
yeah,
value in terms of a culture.
absolutely. And it was when we were on the Yala Peak expedition, we stayed in Langtang village, which has now been rebuilt next to the old village. And then we moved up to Kanjin Gompa, which was sort of our final village before we went up the mountain. And our tea house owner, Jangbu, had his other tea house was in Langtang village and it was destroyed. And he lost his cook and um, some guests in his tea house. And his wife had gone down the valley with, fortunately, further down the valley with their children than was affected by the earthquake. And he'd gone up the valley to go to work as a guide. And we had the most incredible, intense conversation about life. And I said to him, you know, you live here all the time, reminded by what went on 10 years ago. It's like, what have you put in place to cope with that? And he said, Joe, this is life. I can't overthink it. I have to get on with it. What's the alternative? And because I do feel I'm not sort of person that thinks if something bad happens, why me? Because why not me? You know, why not me? And during the earthquake, it was like, what is it that why did I survive and our 3 guys and the 19 people at base camp didn't? It was just in the right place at the right time. I was in the safest place on the mountain at the right time. And even through my deepest, darkest moments, going through the menopause and the loss of my father, and, you know, just life's toughness, every morning I wake up and I'm like, I'm alive. And I have a chance to make a difference in this day. And again, it goes back to my love of 1%. I can make a 1% difference, or I can have a 1% win. Then that's it for me. And you know, when Jangbu went, "This is life," I was like, I will never forget that conversation, and I will never forget that saying. You know, I'm even considering having a tattoo, but I don't have tattoos. I'm like, oh, do I? Don't I? I'm like, no, I'll remember it. You know, this is life. And yeah, it was a going back. I mean, I've been back to Nepal many times since the earthquake. Going back last year to that valley, and meeting the incredible, incredible people who live in the valley, and it was, you know, obliterated, not just Langtang, but further down. And they just get on with it. They're like, okay, tough stuff happens. And I'm sure psychologically there's fallout there as well. So how are we going to make this work? Because this is our home. This is where we live. And our families are here. How are we going to make it work? And they do. They do, because they pull together. So yeah, and it's interesting you were saying about, you know, the men going around holding hands, and I love that, because that's a real sense of kinship, because that's happens in Africa as well. You know, when we're on Kilimanjaro, and I'm heading out there in 10 days' time, in, you know, our porters, who are more often than not guys, will walk around holding hands, and some some clients like, oh, not sure about that. It's like, okay, we've moved on from that anyway. It's like, this is what they do. That's their culture. That's their kinship. And I love that. Because it's just, this is life. Take us as we are. So yeah, amazing. We can learn so much from other cultures, so much. And it's not that what we do right and they do wrong. It's like, actually, they just do it differently. And what can I learn from that?
Absolutely. Let's, I think the mind always wants to kind of think of like a right and a wrong, that somehow like your way of life is the right way to do it. But actually, we are all just different people from different parts of the world. And I think your experiences of traveling, and anyone who goes traveling is able to, it goes back to that sort of cliche, like opening up the mind and just seeing the world as it is rather than within your own culture and your own country. And you have since spoken about all your experiences in a talk with the Red Roses, team that went to go on and win the Women's Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
And you've also had, I know that you have players message you personally to thank you for that talk. Yeah. I have never been in any sort of professional sporting environment or really any place that has so much importance placed on culture, values, team, where in the corporate world or the business space, that's usually sort of overlooked in favor for profit. What was it at that time in the talk that you think the team gained most from your experiences?
The talk was really about bringing to life their metaphorical journey of Everest. So John Mitchell, who's their head coach, and is a Kiwi, and he uses Everest as a metaphor for their journey. And at the time I did the talk, it was 2 years ago now. So it was when they were going into the Women's Six Nations in 2024. And I remember I was asked to bring to life their journey. So what are the camps like? What is it like to be on a mountain where it's hard and uncertain, and, where the team is maybe not pulling together as it could do, and all of that sort of stuff. And the sort of, again, the little wins that I gained from looking out for the 1%. So one of the team asked me in the Q&A, what do you do on a rest day? I said, I rest. And there was a kind of bit of a ripple of laughter. And she said, what do you mean you rest? It's like, that's what rest days are for. It's passive acclimatization. So the rest is where you gain the most. We work really hard on the mountain. We don't go great distances at any great speed, but because you're at high altitudes, you're working really hard and your body is on 24/7. So on a rest day, I treat my body to doing as little as possible in order for it to gain as much as possible. And it's not that I, sleep all day and don't get out of bed and anything, because movement is important at altitude. Passive acclimatization is what it's all about. So whether your rest is doing crosswords, or I know that they're quite arty within the team, so there's a lot of art and things going on, or whether it's learning a new skill, all of this, taking your mind off what you've been doing all the other days and with the hard training, and giving your mind as much as a rest as your body. And also little wins, like when I leave for a summit, I used to think, oh my God, this is it. And, this is going to be really hard and everything. And that was I found that was actually bringing my attitude down and my energy down. So where do I want to put my energy? Where do I want to spend my energy? So when I was leaving, and I practiced this over many other mountain climbs. So on Everest, when we arrived at Camp 4, that's in the death zone. So in itself, it's like, this is quite serious. We rested I think we got up there, we arrived there at 1:30. in the afternoon, and we were leaving for summit 8:30. So you rest. There's not much sleep going on at 8,000 meters. We had an oxygen mask on with a little bit of oxygen coming in because we weren't doing much movement. And then when I was leaving, taking my first footsteps out to the summit, it's like, okay, I have a choice here. I either go, oh my God, this is it, and let the nerves and adrenaline get to me, and I'm wasting my energy massively on that. Or I can think, okay, I'm going on an acclimatization walk, and I'm going to touch this camp, which happens to be the summit, and come back down. And that for me has brought my energy absolutely where I need it to be. And that's sort of being in the moment, not even thinking about the summit, because if I don't take care of my footsteps as I'm doing them, the summit isn't going to happen. So I have to be in the moment. And we were talking about when they were going out on the pitch, and again, one of the team members came up to me at dinner afterwards and said that you're sort of trying to calm yourself down is not going to work for me. So it was like, okay, so what is it that lights your fire, that keeps your energy on a level that you need it to be and fires you up as well? So whatever that is, that's what you need to hang on to, rather than going out on the pitch going, oh my God, this is too much. Because we're all human, we all have feelings. So, and I think also bringing it to life, the importance of kinship and team. I had such a hard time on Everest. The team was not cohesive, and I was part of that. I had my part to play in that. I found it emotionally and psychologically very difficult. And you can absolutely tell that the Red Roses have such a strong bond, and they've worked really hard on that. And that doesn't just come from being in the same room as everyone else. That comes from a lot of hard work. And I was a 1% part of their journey. And it's really lovely to be acknowledged for my 1% part. And I didn't go to do it, I didn't go to have that acknowledgement. To see their success and know that my words have landed well is, it's a real sense of pride. My dad would be singing in his grave, because he was a massive rugby fan, and celebrating their success. So yeah, why not?
Seriously cool.
Yeah.
Where I wanted to finish after all these eclectic experiences is clearly you've experienced a lot of change in your life, and you've had that really unique experience of changing the trajectory of your own life. If you could leave one thing with anyone, not necessarily someone that wants to get into the adventure industry, but someone who's at kind of like a point in their life where they're thinking about going into an adventure, whatever that is for them, what one bit of advice would you kind of want to instill in those people?
Yeah. Oh, interesting question. I think really if you weren't fearful, what would you do? So take out the fear factor, write down on a piece of paper, what would you do? Because it's the fear factor that quite often stops us from doing it. And I remember on a camp tour on Everest, I nearly walked off because the psychological white noise I just found too much. And I thought, if the pain of what I'm experiencing now, is that going to be greater or less if I walk off the mountain than if I stay and face it and carry on? And my regret, if I walked off the mountain and I didn't do Everest, would be huge. So looking back in 2008, when I decided to sort of walk away from the corporate life and all of that it had, knowing that I wasn't happy in that realm, if I hadn't have gone and done that, I would have not done all the things I've done since then. So, make that 1% difference in your life, because it will grow exponentially. Give it a go. We live one precious life. Go and give it a go.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your experiences as someone that has literally changed on like an internal level. What I love so much about your story is that the person you're describing before is certainly not the person that I'm speaking with today. And that for so many people, including myself, is a big inspiration. So thanks a lot for sharing your story and coming on.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks so much for sticking with me and trying to get the date to come on as well. So we will meet in 3D at some point, for sure.
Yes, please. Yeah, up a mountain somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love that.
Thank you very much.